The Minnesota Vikings versus the Los Angeles Chargers.
Good morning, Gallahorn. We are back. All three of us. Ted, Drew, and Dave. However, Ted is not in the picture at this time. There he is. How you doing, Ted?
If I was any better, I'd be against the law. Let's light this candle. We'll talk to Drew first.
Okay. Now, we are set up, ready to go. We are moving into the week where we are flying out to L.A., the left coast, home of sunshine and smog, to play in or at the soccer pitch against the Los Angeles Chargers. How you doing, Drew?
Oh, geez. Not feeling good about this game, you guys. I'm telling you. That's classic Vikings drop the ball and take a big dipsy doodle right in the middle of the field. It does, dude. It feels like I'm not feeling good about it. You guys, or Dave at least, was kind of worried about last week being. This is a trap game surrounded by a minefield.
Well,
I crunched the numbers. It's kind of scary.
I have one key to victory, but I'll hold that for later.
The deep pass?
Nope.
We already heard that one.
Nope.
No?
No, but however, that still works, by the way.
And by the way, no one cares what I'm doing. Let's light this candle. The famous Ted Glover is here. Susan Sarandon's here. David Stefano's here. The shag carpet's here. Let's get into this Chargers game. You want my thoughts on it?
Let's go.
Let's light this candle. My good friend says. Listen, the first thing you have to be aware of is the Chargers are not a 5-8 team. They're not a 5-8 team. The Chargers are an 8-5 or a 9-4 team statistically. The Chargers and Vikings are within 11 yards of each other offensively. The Chargers, much like the Vikings, and this kind of goes back through the years. I mean, I was raised in San Diego, so I'm really familiar with the San Diego fanship and been to the Jack Murphy Stadium a bunch of times. I grew up in that atmosphere. A couple of my brothers are big Charger fans. The Chargers are the Vikings of the AFC. Always on the edge, always making some kind of run or making it interesting. They're not scrubs, but when it comes to the big, crucial moment, they fall apart. They've done it a bunch of times. They're even doing it this year. The game a couple of weeks ago against the Broncos, how they lost that on the penalty. That's typical Chargers. Broncos threw a long pass, hope for a penalty. They get it, kick a field goal, game's over. And I hear it from my brother all the time, and it goes back and forth, and we're kind of in the same boat. But what San Diego put up last week was hitting their stride. The dismantling they did to Jacksonville. Oh, man. I mean, San Diego is not a 5-8 team, and I'm not sure what we're walking into, but it feels to me like a buzzsaw.
Ambush is kind of the word I was thinking. You look at the one thing I think that gives the Vikings an advantage is that the Chargers all season have done something really stupid at an inopportune time.
Yes. I will agree with that. Yes.
The Vikings were for a while. They've gotten much better at that. And they're also the Chargers. Phillip Rivers is not having a good year. He is not having a good year for Phillip Rivers that we would expect. And they give up a lot of turnovers. And the Vikings defense in the last couple of weeks has gotten a lot better in taking the ball away. And I just think, especially after that encouraging performance against Detroit last week, I think the Vikings will be okay. But I completely understand the hesitation in entering this game.
These two teams talk about making a big mistake or imploding. They're very similar along those lines. I expect this one to come down to the fourth quarter, and whichever team doesn't make the biggest mistakes is probably going to win. I mean, that sounds kind of cliche, but Phillip Rivers has flashes of brilliance, but he always seems to throw things away at the last second. And they do turn the ball over. They're -10, like you mentioned, Ted. But it's all about controlling those two backs, Austin Eckler and Melvin Gordon. Last week, the Chargers had 525 yards of offense, 27 first downs.
Jeez.
300 of that were combined yards between Eckler and Gordon.
Wow.
They had.
Are you kidding me?
It's almost. You have to watch their receiving skills as much as their rushing skills. Receiving, they had 9 catches between them for 141 yards combined, and then combined rushing, they had another 156 for 297. I mean, it really does all come down to those two guys. And when they get it moving, when Eckler and Gordon get it moving, they do what they did to Jacksonville last week, which is a one-sided ass whooping.
Right, but is that if you've got backs that are catching balls like that, most of their coverage is by linebackers, is it not?
Yes. But the fact that they can hit you with either guy and they keep them on the field together really causes problems for the defense. It did for Jacksonville. They didn't know how to stop them.
I think a lot of that, and I don't mean to try and downplay how well, I still want to say San Diego.
San Diego, that's what I'm calling them today.
As how well the Chargers played, but the Jaguars look and feel like a team that's just kind of, they're ready for the offseason. I mean, I watched a little bit of that game on the Red Zone channel, and they just, their body language and the level of emotion they had in that game was like a team that's just going through the motion end of the season.
And they were like, I agree, they were like 22nd in defense. I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
So the one thing I'm also very encouraged about is the Vikings' defensive performance last week against Detroit. That was a good performance as much as it was, I think, a confidence builder for the Vikings themselves. Because the Lions, it was a rookie quarterback in Blau, but they played very good defense against a top 10 offense in the NFL, and that gives me hope going through to this game and then the other two games, the Bears and the Packers game, to finish out the season. So maybe they got their mojo back a little bit next week, and they're better late than never, but figuring it out just in time for this final 3-game stretch run.
I have to agree with all that, but again, we're going on the road in a big game.
Outdoors, on grass.
Listen, 3 out of the 4 defeats the Vikings have had, Ted and Dave. That's you two guys. 3 out of the 4 losses they've had, the Minnesota Vikings have had the ball at the end with a chance to win. Up in Lambeau, they had the ball. They threw the pick in the end zone. We all know what happened to Arrowhead. It was tied, and we had the ball with the shit drive to, whatever. And then we had the game in Seattle where we were down 4, but we had the ball in the last drive. So that's 3 times. That's 3. So the Vikings are 9-4. They can easily be 11-2 themselves.
Yeah.
So if it's outdoors, everything Dave just said, if it comes down to whoever's having the ball last, our biggest advantage may be that we're playing the Chargers, who implode. That may be our best thing. We're playing a team that seems to make these shoot themselves in the foot as much as we have in the past. So,
well, they have, and all their losses this year, I think all of them have been with under a score.
Yeah, every single one of their losses has been a 1-score loss.
Yeah,
and I've watched 3 of their endings, and every single one of them, Phillip Rivers had the ball with the chance to win the game, and he threw an interception.
Right.
Every single one.
And one of the other ones, the field goal kicker misses.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And
which is kind of like us having the ball last.
Yes.
So maybe the kids to not have the ball last.
Who's going to give it away? It's not who's going to win. Who's going to give it away?
You look at it offensively and defensively, guys. They rank higher in both categories than us overall.
Well, give us the NFL numbers.
The Vikings offense is 11th. The Chargers offense is 10th. The Vikings defense is 14th. And here's the shocker. The Chargers defense overall is 4th in the NFL right now. 4th. And they're 5-8.
Really?
That's points against, right?
They're 4th overall. They're 4th against the pass. They're 17th against the rush, and they're 8th scoring, giving up 20 points a game.
So what's their turnover? It's their turnover margin. They've got a really bad turnover margin, though, right?
The turnovers are what kill them. They're -10.
Yeah.
And we're a +5. And I'm not a math whiz, but that's good. They're giving away games at the end. They're giving away on turnovers, but offensively, they're the 5th best passing team in the league. They're in the 20s on the rush end of it, but once they get that pass, you can find some way to shut down Rivers. That's always with San Diego. We've handled Rivers in the past. Zimmer's handled him. He keeps him in the pocket, and he forces passes all the time. I'm just worried about those two backs, guys. I'm worried about Gordon and Eckler coming out from all directions and burning the shit out of our linebackers or whatever.
And Rivers is also at the point in his career where, he was never much of a quarterback, a guy that moves in the pocket. He's even more stationary now. And I think the Vikings defensive line, now that Linval Joseph, I think one of the things we really didn't talk about last week is how much Linval Joseph, his return, and I think he's all about healthy now. He improved really good last week
versus the week before. Yes, he got some push and he got movement.
If Joseph is back and can push the middle of that line, and Rivers is not going to be able to avoid getting out of the pocket and getting away from Danielle Hunter or Everson Griffin. And I think that really is a big advantage for the Vikings.
I think that's more than the advantage. That's probably the key.
Probably,
because
yeah.
The deal with Rivers is Rivers works that middle of the field. He did it with Gates for all those years. You give him enough time. You don't give him any middle pressure, he's going to kill you over the middle with the backs and with the tight end. You rush, just like Brady, Rivers hates that center pressure. And if you can pressure him in the middle, but instead of throwing it away, he'll throw it to your guys. He throws a lot of picks, that guy.
He doesn't like to give up a down. And he'll try and make something out of nothing when there's less than nothing. Mm-hmm. And a guy like where Aaron Rodgers can pull it off, I don't think Rivers can anymore. I've watched him throw. His throwing motion has always been a little Bojankety, and I don't think he's got the zip on the ball that he had maybe 3 or 4 years ago, which I think is one of the reasons why he's got so many more interceptions this year. He's still fearless, and that's good, but he never had an arm like Brett Favre, for example. And now he's 36, 37. He's lost a little bit of velocity. The throws that he made 2 and 3 years ago are now getting intercepted, which I think is what's. And I kind of think we can expect that or hope for that. We'll see.
The one thing Rivers does have going for him, and he's kind of an annoying player to watch over the years, is he's competitive as shit. That guy, he could be down 30-10 with 8 minutes left, and he's running around screaming at people. He wants to. I mean, it's hard to douse the fire on that dude, even though he makes a lot of mistakes. No lead is safe with Rivers, I don't think.
Well, and Mike Zimmer told a story about how he'll come over and yell at Zimmer. And he has in the past where he's come over to the sideline and gone, "You call that a blitz?"
I guess you could say that when you have 19 children.
That could be.
Ted, how's our defense going to come out? I mean, that's what this comes down to. I'm already worried about going out to the West Coast, playing all that stuff. But doesn't it really come down to the defense? We have to continue what we did against the Lions, don't you think?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's why I go back to an important game for the Vikings. Not only you had to win late in the year and all that stuff, but the way the defense played, they were just dominant. I think I mentioned it when we did our In the Raw that although the game started out a little bit slow, the Vikings offense, it took a couple drives to get in the end zone. I never once felt like the Vikings were in danger of losing the lead or the game. They just felt like they were in complete control the whole time. And a lot of that had to do with the way the defense played. It was a vintage Mike Zimmer performance on defense, which I would argue I don't know that we have seen yet this year until that Lions game. They were the Raiders game, they were pretty good. The Falcons game, they were pretty good. Although the Falcons got yards, it was more of a couple red zone turnovers, I think, that was the difference in that game going back to the beginning of the year. I'm trying to remember that far back. Can't remember what I did on Tuesday, for goodness sakes. But
Alzheimer's is great.
It was one of those performances that reminded me of 2015, 2016, 2017, where it just felt like no matter what the opponent did, they weren't going to crack the code of what Mike Zimmer was throwing at them. And I think that was important to show that this defense is still capable of that, because they have really good players. They've been saying all year, we're in position. We're just not closing the deal. We're not making the play when the play is there to be made. And last week they made the play. So maybe the switch is flipped or something happened in practice, and now they can carry it over these last 3 games. Because if they can, man, if you have a defense like that and an offense that's playing as well as it is, Vikings are going to be a tough out in the postseason, assuming they even get there.
Well, Mike Zimmer said yesterday or today, the Vikings have yet to play their best football of this season, and they are getting there.
Thanks, Mike. You need to play better. You know what? They could have some extra incentive, because by the time our game starts, when I say our, I mean all of us. We're one big family, baby.
Right.
That the Bears will have beaten that team for Wisconsin. So we'll be playing the Chargers for first place, because the Bears game's on before ours. The Bears are going to beat them. We're going to beat the Chargers, and then we'll be tied going into the big showdown next week. That's kind of how I'm hoping it plays out.
That'd be awesome.
It'll make in the Raw even more special. Now, Courtney Cronin asked Zimmer about the rotation of the defensive backs. And this last game that we're just talking about, how the defense played better, they were doing a rotation. And, of course, Mike wouldn't answer. And he said, I'm not going to answer you. But I think that rotating the defensive backs, getting in fresh legs, getting in fresh eyeballs, right, has helped the entirety of the defense. And it showed last week. They played a lot better. And I fully expect we'll see that the rest of the season.
Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. One thing I learned in the Army that I've taken with me my whole life: if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And you're absolutely right. That's a great point, Dave. It seems weird because, you think you've got your top 2 corners, you should be out on the field all the time, but I would argue that they're kind of Hughes has played, and I think the reason that they went to that rotation is because Mike Hughes is playing a lot better. Like from that Seattle game, was it Seattle where he gave up 15 catches for 352,000 yards or whatever it was? Yeah. Since that game, he's kind of figured it out. And I think a lot of it might have had to do with him still getting fresh and healthy from his knee, although it was rehabbed and all that. You still have stuff you got to work through.
Yeah, it's still a year.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. I agree with it. It's working. It worked last week. I think it can work again. And that also goes back to Holton Hill, who he didn't play a whole lot of snaps, but when he was in, I don't know about you guys, but I'm like, oh, hey, Holton Hill just made another play.
Right.
So it's good.
And it messes with quarterbacks because they're like, wait a minute, that's the wrong number. It messes with receivers. Receivers are sitting there going, I can beat Xavier Rhodes by doing this, right? And then suddenly they line up and it's Holton Hill, and they're going, I didn't study Holton Hill's tape.
Yeah.
Right? So it adds that extra unknown or that extra confusion factor, which Mike Zimmer's defense is famous for, is adding that confusion. And when he's on top and they're confusing everybody, whether it be, linebackers in the gaps or whatever it is, it works beautifully and it dominates. Throw that a dominating defense and our offense that's producing 30-plus points a game, for the most part, it's going to be scary. And speaking of the offense, it does look, even though he's shown limited on the injury report, that we're getting Adam Thielen back.
Yeah, that'll be huge.
AT.
Although I will say, on the injury report today, they showed, Alexander Mattison hasn't practiced the last 2 days.
He's got an ankle injury.
Cook has been a full participant, but he's still nursing that chest or shoulder injury or whatever it is. With Thielen coming back, that's great, but I'm a running back depth because it seems like if Mattison, although Mattison said he's going to play, and that's what they all say, we'll find out Sunday.
Well, Mattison didn't practice.
If Mattison is a no-go and Cook takes one good shot and has to sit out for a while, boys, we're down to the Mike Boone show.
Which I think's okay. If you also learn,
not to disparage Mike Boone, but that would be a significant downgrade from Cook or Mattison, who I think Mattison has played an exceptional role in the exceptional job in the Latavius Murray role that we were all very concerned about coming into the season. So,
I saw 2 people went on the report today. Curse, I believe it was with a toe, and
those usually linger. I'm not feeling too good about him coming back at all next month.
Yeah, if it's turf toe, that's a sprained toe, and
those are
and Bisi Johnson.
Yeah, was he was limited though.
No, I think he was do not, and I don't have it up. I think he was a did not practice, but I think his was an ankle as well. But I'd have to look. But those 2 came onto the report today, which we did not want. So,
well, I mean, with Thielen coming back, assuming he does, that'll be a huge lift for the offense. I think a couple of those games, the Kansas City game, possibly the Seattle game, Thielen could have been a difference maker. Could it have been the difference between winning and losing? Yeah, maybe. I mean, Thielen is a guy that can make plays. You get the ball in his hands, and all of a sudden, a 10-yard square in is now a 75-yard touchdown. So we'll see what happens.
Right, and with Thielen having Thielen and Diggs, that means defenses usually will pay attention to both of those guys.
Good point.
Which opens up the run game.
Just reading my mind, man. I was going to say, who's happiest about Thielen coming back? Cooker,
right?
Because coordinators have to be ready for Diggs and Thielen. It's a huge difference.
Because if you don't cover Diggs and Thielen, Cook should have a big day. And should. And get his yards per carry. Since Thielen went out, his yards per carry dropped to 4.3 yards per carry. I think it was the stat. Dropped.
Yeah.
And bring him back.
5.5 or something?
9?
No, it was higher than that. It was over 5, if I remember correctly. It was close to 6. And if bring him back, if those numbers go back up, that's sweet. That is, and especially this time of year, as we get better and better in December, which is the key. We go 3 and out and get better and better. We'll be a force to reckon with in the playoffs.
Yeah,
but we got to make the playoffs first.
Got to make the playoffs. Now, there's a lot of scenarios that the Vikings end up 10-6 or even 11-5 home
and don't make the playoffs. Yep.
The Rams are right on our tail, and the Rams are playing well.
And they're hot. Yes, they are.
A month ago, I thought the Rams were done. I thought the 6th seed was pretty much in the bag. It's not even remotely the case anymore. The Vikings have got to keep winning to make sure they get into the postseason and hopefully catch Green Bay, and if nothing else, get a home playoff game.
And that's kind of what I'm looking at, guys, for Sunday. I mean, the Vikings, they have a grasp on things right now. I want to see this team come out hungry and wanting to take the fight to the Chargers. I don't want to come out and be chasing the score down 14 and everybody's tentative. I want the second half like we played against the Broncos. That's Vikings football. That let Kirk Cousins go. Let him play. Let him try to win the game. Don't stifle him and just because you want to run the clock out. Let Cousins go. Let him play.
Let's talk
that's important.
In the raw of how good a game Stefanski called. Right? If we're there on Sunday night saying it was fantastic, whether it be done by the run, the pass, however he does it, we're going to be golden. And that's what we need to do. I agree with you, Drew.
I'm not as sold on the corners maybe as much as I heard everything. I agree with everything you guys just said, but the Vikings for me is when that front seven is snarling and snorting, and you got Kendricks running up the middle like a wild man and Blau shitting his pants. That's when the Vikings are really looking. You know what I'm saying? The Vikings defense gets started by the front seven. And when the front seven is playing, when they're playing intense football and Griffin's doing and Hunter's doing the karate kick and they're going nuts, the corners seem to play, but the whole secondary plays better. But if that front seven, if they keep the pressure up, we could just ride them right into the playoffs. But I'm just looking for overall intensity, guys. This is a big game. Is
that your red flag challenge, Drew Bunting?
That the defense holds the Chargers to 17 or less. That's my red flag. That's my challenge to the Vikings defense, which they can do, but just don't get caught in these interference, jump off sides. That feeling where it just starts snowballing and everything's going shitty. Then Eckler runs around the corner for 60 yards, and then they fumble, and then you gotta stay away from all that, but play with some confidence. Let Cousins play. When Cousins does that play action roll out and he hits Diggs on that 40-yard, let him do it.
Yes.
And if they're up in the third quarter, push it.
Yep.
Push the envelope, baby. Let's do it.
Keep the gas pedal down.
Take the game. Take it from the Chargers and make it in the fourth quarter where Rivers is on the sideline going, dag nabbit, we're down by 35. Take it to them. Because you know what? The Rams aren't going to let up. The team from Chicago's not going to let up. They're all coming after us. So the Vikings, they don't need any help right now, and I don't want to finish the season needing help from other teams. If you need help from other teams, you're not a playoff team. Take care of the business yourselves, Vikings. Get out there and do it, and that's my challenge.
Ted, you got a challenge for today?
I do. It's very similar. My challenge is prove to me starting Sunday and for the rest of the season that you are a team that is legitimately considered to be a Super Bowl contender by setting the tempo. Set the tempo on both sides of the ball. That's what they did last week. And they came out, they took it to the Lions. From the moment the Lions came out and took the field, they went 3 and out, got a sack right away. I don't think the offense scored on the first drive, but I'm pretty sure that they scored on the second drive. And they pretty much they made Detroit react to what the Vikings were doing on both sides of the ball all afternoon. If they can do that, I really like this team because there are a lot of good players on both sides of the ball, and they match up as well as anybody in the NFC. They can play with Seattle. They can play with the 49ers. They can play with the Packers. And I firmly believe they are capable. They can play with the Saints. And I firmly believe they are capable of beating all 4 of those teams when it gets to the postseason. But to get to the postseason, you have to prove you're worthy of being in the postseason. So I challenge the Vikings to prove your worthiness and kick the hell out of these last 3 teams and get to the dance.
Dave's challenge is that the Vikings defense comes out hot, playing and dominating in that first quarter. That they press their will, confuse the San Diego.
Go ahead,
Chargers offense.
San Diego. They'll always be San Diego.
And destroy their will to play the game. If they do that, we did it against New York. We did it against Oakland. They do that, they will have made a statement. And that's my key. That's my challenge to come out there and win.
We did it against the Giants and the Raiders like we're supposed to be all sold on that.
Well, hey, it just shows they can do it.
The Cowboys, they did it. They went on the road and they won a big game.
And they did.
Cowboys or anything, but that was a big win. And they, sure, we lost a couple. We probably should have won, but it's all about where we're at right now. And I know Thielen coming back is huge for the team and everybody because he's a leader. I mean, Cousins is going to be fired up with that. Diggs is going to be fired up. Everybody's in the offense is going to be fired up. I want to mention injuries. I think we're doing pretty well this year. 2 years ago, we had 1 starting offensive lineman at this point in the season.
Yeah.
And our offensive line is pretty much still intact. So I think we're doing, knock on wood, but we're doing pretty good with the big uglies up front. But Ted is absolutely right. Come out, make a statement, head into that big divisional matchup next week with a giant win under your belt.
Yeah, prove to me you're not the Vikings of old. Prove to me you're not looking past this game towards the Packers game and the Bears to finish out the season, and then just ruin what you were aiming for and not taking this team seriously. Because they, like you mentioned, Drew, although they're a 5-8 team, they're not a 5-8 team. They have a lot of good players on both sides of the ball. They've just played some fundamentally bad football that's cost them some games. So make them play like they have and end up this season 5-9 when we walk out of LA.
Bam!
With that, guess what? It's time for trivia. Drew's Trivia Challenge, the Vikings versus San Diego version.
You guys know the rules. Your record is 38. Your record's 38. That's pretty impressive. But we move on to the trivia with the Chargers and the Vikings. Okay, you guys ready?
Let's go.
Number one, who's won the most games in this series?
Chargers.
Wrong. It's split 6-6.
There you go. You get credit. Dave saved you on the mulligan. That was a trick question. They're tied 6-6.
Now, what's bad about that? There's a pattern.
You play to win the game.
Vikings lost the first one. San Diego won. Vikings won the second.
Nobody's ever had a winning streak in this series.
Yeah,
that's right.
It's all 1-1. It's loss, win, loss, win, loss, win. Vikings are the last one to win.
Well, since we're winners on this show and we want our team to win,
we're going to get the streak. Start the streak.
We're going to focus on the wins. We're going to go back now to the 6 times that we did win against the Chargers. And what I'm going to do on this second question is we're going to go back to each win in the year they were, and there's a possibility of 4 points on each question. I'm going to give you the year, I'm going to give you the score, and you're going to give me the 2 head coaches and the 2 starting quarterbacks for each game.
Okay.
You have a possibility of 4 points per question. Out of the 6 games, there's a possible 4 points per, for it's 24 points if you nail them all. First time we won was 1975. Who were the 2 starting quarterbacks and who were the coaches?
Dan Fouts and France Tarkenton were the quarterbacks.
One is right. Fran was the quarterback.
Bud Grant for the Vikings was the coach.
Correct.
It wasn't Coryell yet. He was still with the Cardinals.
That is very correct. I thought you were going to go that route.
I can't remember who the Chargers coach is, though.
Dave?
I'm neither blank.
Tommy Prothro? The great Tommy Prothro was the coach, and Jesse Freitas was the quarterback.
That 75 game, that was late in the year, wasn't it?
28-13 in Minnesota.
Yeah, but it was like in November.
Right.
Can we pause trivia for just a minute for Don Glover time? Don Glover story time?
Let's do
absolutely.
it. Let's do it.
This game, this 1975 game, was the first time my father ever took me to a Vikings game. The first time I ever saw the Vikings live. And before the game, the Vikings were out. I don't know, for those of you that are too young to remember, Bud Grant would, at the old Met Stadium, both teams were on the same sideline, and they came out of the dugouts. The Vikings came out of the first base dugout, and the visiting team would come out of the third base dugout at the old Met. And so before the game, I got to go. He would let me go down to the railing, and because I was a little kid, everybody let me in front, and I got to high five all the Vikings as they were coming out of the
awesome.
dugout. And they didn't. None of them had the. It was just their uniforms, and they were all warming up, and it was cold, and the Chargers were already out on the field. I'll never forget this. And so the Vikings are coming out, and they don't have any heat, nothing on.
Right.
And the Chargers kind of collectively, and the Vikings are just going about their business like it's 75 degrees, a nice spring day in the Bloomington Prairie. And the Chargers and the guys, you're just kind of, some of them are huddled. A couple guys are over on the sideline by the heater, and they all just kind of look, and they all the Vikings won that game
just by
psychologically the minute they came out on the field.
Wow.
I'll never forget that. Anyways, okay, sorry.
That's awesome, dude.
That was the first game my dad ever took me to.
The Don Glover story.
Yep.
They were beaten before it even started.
And the Vikings had a big goal line stand. in the second half, and we were on the other end of the stadium, and the only way we knew we were down would have been like almost into the right field stands, kind of down about the 20-yard line, and the Chargers, the game was on the other end of the field, and the only way I could tell that the Chargers didn't score because they ran in like into the middle of the teeth of the Vikings defense 4 times was every time the people that were on the third base bleacher side, as soon as the runner hit the pile, they all stood up and started cheering. And I knew that the guy hadn't scored a touchdown. So I stood up and started cheering. It was cool, man. One of my fondest memories of my dad as a kid.
I was in San Diego at the time. I remember when the plane flew back and they interviewed Donnie Woods. Remember the running back for the Chargers?
Uh-huh.
I think it was Don Woods or Bo Matthews, one of them. They asked him, Ted Leitner asked him, how about that weather in Minnesota? Oh, man, the hell with that weather. I do remember that telecast. That's a great story. Thank you. So my trivia spurned on a Glover story. That's great.
That's awesome.
All right, our next win in this 12-game matchup or whatever we had, our second win out of our 6 wins came in 1981 when we beat them in San Diego in a thriller, 33-31.
I remember this game, too.
So do I. So you got to give me the quarterbacks and the head coaches for each squad.
81 was Tommy Kramer, 2-minute Tommy Kramer. And 81 was still Bud Grant.
Mm-hmm.
And by 81, for the Chargers, it was Don Coryell and Dan Fouts.
Clean sweep on that 1981 year. That's excellent. Good job, Ted Glover. Smitty. All right, Smitty. Smitty, the next time we won was 1985, 4 years later. We beat them in Minnesota 21-17. 1985. Quarterbacks, head coaches for each team.
85. So 85, that was Bud Grant when he returned after they fired Steckel.
I thought I would trick you up on that, but not you.
So Bud Grant, and I think it was Tommy Kramer still.
Yes, it was. Wow. Dude, you're kicking ass on this.
For the Chargers, when did Coryell retire?
It was probably still Dan Fouts as the quarterback.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. Fouts, I'm still going to say Coryell.
Yes, it was.
All right.
I thought I would screw you guys up having the same people 2 consecutive games, but it did not. Well, that's a 4 there, and that's a 4 there. I want to go back to that 1981 game. Tommy Kramer had 444 and 4 touchdowns in the air.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think the Chargers, I can't remember the Chargers quarter. Well, it was Fouts, but he had over 400, I think, that day too. But Kramer had a huge day. That's 4-4. Fouts started that game but did not finish. Matt Herman finished because we knocked Fouts out.
Really?
Yeah. So clean sweep on the last 2. So we go to our 4th Vikings win in this series against San Diego. It was 1999, 14 years after that. We didn't beat them for 14 years.
Yeah, but we only played them
12 times total.
Yeah.
So give me the quarterbacks. This gets a little tougher here.
99 would have been Denny. Well, the coach was Denny Green. What?
Come on, I know you're going to get this.
What week was that game in 1999?
I don't have that information in front of me. We beat them 35-27, though.
Had to have been Jeff George then.
Ding, ding!
Because Randall Cunningham had been benched by it because he didn't have a good year.
That is correct. Do you have any idea who the Chargers guys were?
Marty Schottenheimer was the coach?
No. Dave, you got a guess on the coach? Mike Riley, the old Oregon guy. Oregon State coach.
Was Stan Humphrey still their quarterback?
Nope.
Hail
to the
Harbaugh? Harbaugh, really?
Harbaugh threw for 404 that day against the Vikings.
Did he really? Now that I've completely forgotten he was on the Chargers for a while.
Yeah, wasn't that the game where Chris Carter had like 2 receiving touchdowns?
I think he did. 3? I don't have the box score in front of me, but I think he did have 2 in that game. So 7, 11, 13 out of 24. That is not bad. So on the first 2 questions, you got 14 total. You got 24 to go to tie your record. Now we move forward to 2007, the AP game. We all remember that 296, Jeff.
296, baby.
Quarterbacks and coaches, yell them out.
Quarterback for the Vikings was Brooks Bollinger.
He was one of the 2.
Right.
And In 07?
You know who the other one was? I don't think Bollinger started.
No, Bollinger came in relief because the starter got injured.
I need the starters and the coaches.
Tavares Jackson then.
Okay, that's correct.
And the coach was Chili.
Yeah, that's right.
I was gonna say, wait a minute, yeah, it was.
Yeah. And the Chargers, obviously, are going to have the same quarterback the next 2 games.
Yeah, Rivers was playing by then. Yeah, it was Phillip Rivers.
Yes.
Because he's 108 years old.
Schottenheimer?
No. Our old buddy, Norv Turner, was the coach.
Norv.
Norv Turner. And our last matchup, the last time we beat the Chargers, our 6th victory against them was 2015. Quarterback and coaches, please.
15
Teddy Bridgewater.
Teddy and Jim.
Look at that grin.
Teddy and Jim, and then it would have been Rivers still.
Right?
And I don't know. I don't know who it was.
Mike McCoy.
Mike McCoy.
Got 7 there.
It's not that Teddy had a great game because he was lousy that game, but Adrian Peterson had a very good game.
So you're sitting at 21 right now, going into question number 3, which is not bad. Random question that I know you're not going to study on. Here we go. The Vikings have had 22 punters in their established time in the NFL since 1961. Punters are part of the game, guys. I knew you'd never look at the punters. Who the fuck looks at the punters? But you get a point for every punter that ever punted for the Vikings.
Chris Cluey.
That's 1.
All right. Neil Clabo.
That's another.
Cluey.
Colquitt, obviously.
Colquitt.
Yes, Colquitt.
Locke.
Locke.
Jeff Locke.
True. Proud of UCLA.
God, there's been a
Come on, guys. I thought at 22. I thought I had you down for half. You get half these.
Greg Coleman.
The longest lasting Viking punter and the greatest punter we've ever had, Mr. Gregory Coleman.
Donald Igwebuike.
He's a kicker.
Damn it.
That's your mulligan. You can't miss anymore.
Vedvik. That was in preseason.
Yeah, that's not a mulligan. I won't hold that one against you. Come on, guys. Punter before Coleman. Come on, man.
It's just...
Got his punters. Dave's the special teams guy.
I know I am.
I thought he knew.
And you took me totally off guard.
Who was the punter for the '98 team? Had the Snickers, kept the Snickers bar. Mitch Berger.
That is correct. Mitch Berger, 14th punter all time.
I'm dying over here, man. This is bad.
I know.
I'm done. That's all I can think of on top of my head.
Yeah, you got us.
1, 2,
I
3,
will study the punters and the
6.
kickers.
You got 6 out of 22. I don't know what that grades in the Army, but that's an F in my book. So
that's that. You know what that grades out? Infantry. You're going infantry, baby.
Let's just run through them real quick, because I know you'll know some of these names.
I know.
Some are unknown. Fred Cox punted 1 year.
Of course.
Get out of here.
Walden,
he
the
did
old
both.
Steeler guy, remember him? He punted for the Vikings. A guy named King Hill, King of the Road. Bob Lee punted 67 times in 1969.
What?
Yep. And we all remember Mike Eyeshide. He was the punter back in there.
Yeah. Damn it.
Now you're going to kick yourself. Bucky Scribner.
Yes.
Harry Sphincter Newsom. Harry Newsom. Mike Saxon. Kyle Richardson. Eddie Johnson. Darren Bennett. Ryan Quigley and Matt Wild.
Quigley and Wild.
Quigley. That was the guy I couldn't think of.
All right, you're up to 27. You're 11 away from your record. How you feeling right now, guys?
I don't know. We'll see.
You got a possible 10 on this one. Vikings total career touchdowns, non-quarterbacks. Total career touchdowns. You get a point for everyone you can name. Who are the top 10 Viking total touchdown getters?
Total
Adrian
career
Peterson?
as a Viking or total career as a career?
Total career as a Viking.
Adrian Peterson.
He's 2.
Chuck Foreman.
He's 5. I'm giving you the order in which they're done.
Peterson was 2.
Right. Come on, there's obvious one's the first one.
Randy Moss.
No, he's 3.
Chris Carter.
Chris Carter.
Chris Carter with 110. He was number 1. AP 102, Moss 93, Foreman 75. There's one
Robert
more between.
Smith?
There's one more between. No, Robert Smith is not on the list.
Really?
We have one mulligan left. There's one guy at number 4, and then 6 through 10. All-time Viking total touchdown.
Steve Jordan.
Steve Jordan is not on the list.
Anthony Carter.
Oh, Anthony Carter.
Well, you get 2 mulligans. If you don't, that's all you get. As long as you don't have any wrong ones, that's right. Anthony Carter is right after Chuck Foreman. Carter was number 6 all time. You got number 4, and then you got 7, 8, 9, and 10 to go.
It's got to be an old school guy like
It is an old school guy.
Bill Brown.
That's correct. Billy Brown had 76 career touchdowns.
Wow.
Boom, boom. They called him Boom, boom.
So now we got 7, 8, 9, 10 to go.
Yes. And no mulligans left.
Let's see. Boy. Osborne's got to be up there. No?
Is Percy on there?
No, Percy Harvin?
Yeah.
No.
Number 7 was our boy Teddy Brown.
Oh.
First signature I ever got of the team bus in 1979 after the preseason game. Teddy Brown. Do you want me to sign that? Yeah, I do, Mr. Brown. What's your name? Andrew. Really? That's your name? That's what he said. And you know what's weird about that? After Ted Brown signed the thing, Randy Holloway signed it. Then I see this guy walking out smoking, and it was Jim Marshall. And I said to my brother, I was just like 13 at the time. I looked at my brother and I said, "The Vikings smoke?" But remember back then, you could go right up to the buses and talk to these guys. You can't.
Yeah.
Ted Brown was 7th with 53. Next is Sammy White, number 8.
Okay.
He had 50. Next is Kyle Rudolph.
Ooh,
Really?
yes, that's right.
So we have an
He's
active
moving up
guy
there.
up there. He's 9th all time. And number 10 is Tommy Mason from the old school. He had 39.
Yeah, okay.
So 27 plus 6, 33. You're within 5 of tying your record.
All right.
Last question. And it's Charger Hall of Famers.
Oh, God.
And I will give you a hint. There's 10 on this list. There's 8 players. There's 1 coach and 1 GM. That's your hint. 8 are players. 1 is a coach. 1 is a GM. You need 6 for your new record. 5 to tie.
Coach would have to be Don Coryell.
Coach is Don Coryell.
GM, Bobby Beathard.
Yes.
Dan Fouts.
Dan Fouts.
Fred Dean.
No. You only have one mulligan left, and now you're within 3 of tying your record. Fred Dean was not on there. But Fred Dean should be on. Fred Dean is a badass.
LaDainian.
Lance Allworth.
You say LaDainian?
Yes.
Yeah.
LaDainian is on there.
Lance Allworth should be on there.
Lance Allworth is on there.
Junior Seau.
Oh, there
Seau
we go.
You've just tied your record, 38.
We need 1 more.
Out of the 4 guys left on here.
Oh.
I got an idea.
Wait, Fred Dean is on here.
He is?
Ah! Record! Way to go, Ted!
It was right under this other name.
Is Charlie Joyner on there?
Dude, you guys got 7 of these fucking guys. Yeah, there's another one. Charlie Joyner. Watch Charlie Joyner play for 12 years, never missed a pass.
Gates.
Best hands I've ever seen.
Antonio Gates.
There's your mulligan.
He's still playing.
He's still,
Or
is
he
he?
just-
He just retired. He will be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
He will.
Who are we missing? I can't think any. Is Louis Kelcher on there?
No. Smoke cigarettes with Louis at Friars nightclub.
What's that?
The Chargers, after the game at Murphy Stadium, they used to go to this little pub right by Jack Murphy Stadium off Friars Road, and it was called Friars. That was the name of the bar. And I met my brother knows all these old Chargers. Doug Wilkerson, all those. Louis Kelcher. My brother still talks to Louis Kelcher.
Really?
And I went in there one day, and I got to meet him. It was a real big deal. They weren't Vikings, but I got to meet him, and I was wearing my Viking hat. And I think it was Kelcher who said, "That's ridiculous." How do you wear? They're a bunch of cool dudes. He was a great dude.
Cool.
He was a very good guy. The only ones you missed, there's 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40 is your new record.
Woohoo!
So 40 is the new Triv record. The guys you missed were Ron Mix, early 60s guy, AFL guy, and Kellen Winslow.
Yes, Kellen Winslow.
How do we miss that one, Dave?
Yes, that we should beat ourselves.
Look at how many you knew, though. It's not even our team. That's pretty decent.
Yeah, but they were good players.
Yeah.
I mean, when we were growing up, we looked at the stars across the league, and those were guys that we looked at.
Especially Lance Allworth, Bambi. You ever had a chance to watch film on a wide receiver?
A little bit, yeah.
That dude was the shit. Excellent. You guys set a new record. Now we'll have to go for the $20,000 pyramid next round. But
all right.
As usual, very impressed with the trivia knowledge of both of you guys. Well done.
With that, it's time to wrap up the show. But first, any spicy hot takes for this weekend?
Spicy hot take.
You don't have to have one. I'll keep it bland.
I'm gonna say Rhodes gets an interception. That's about spicy you can think of, man. I'm gonna say Rhodes gets a pick.
Okay.
He's only gotten one in the last 40 games, so he's due.
I'm gonna say the Vikings defense scores a touchdown this week. They've been coming on. They've been getting some turnovers. Phillip Rivers just kind of throws some bad passes, and it very well could be Rhodes that gets not only the interception but the score. But I think the Vikings defense is going to produce a touchdown this week.
I will not throw a flag on that spicy take. That is excellent take right there.
And I have none because mine are horrible. Other than Scott Backstrom and his Tailgate Master Spices are the best rubs, best additives, especially as you're going into the holiday season. You want to get that meat just perfect for your guests.
That's what she said.
I want it. It's always important to have your meat just perfect. Come on, baby. Hey, you want the score that the Bunting computer spit out this morning?
Yeah.
What's that?
And remember the score. You can make money on this if you're a gambling type. Me, I don't gamble, but you may. Vikings 23-20 is what the computer said.
Okay.
And I am thinking the Vikings are going to lose. So we're kind of at odds. I don't want to sound like a bummer guy, but this trip scares me. But I'm glad the computer said that. Computer's usually right.
Yeah, but I would think hopefully the offense scores more than that. Anyways.
But what's the most we scored on the road this year?
They got 38 against, didn't they get in the 30s against
28 on Dallas.
Right, but we've gotten in the 30s a couple times.
This is a fourth ranked defense in the league. I'd be happy with 23.
Yeah.
Well, I'd be happy with 10 if we won it. I mean,
as long as we win, get the W, without a doubt.
Sure, by the way.
Thanks.
Change that 7 to a 9. Put a 9 on there.
Absolutely. A 9 right here. And there's still a possibility of that if you go through all the playoff scenarios. We'll get into more of that next week. Let's let this weekend play out. Any last words there, Drew?
Meow, meow, Viking town.
Ted?
So you cats on the flip flop.
Vikings scored 42 in Detroit earlier this year. 42.
Damn!
So let's go for 45 on the road.
Imagine that.
Super Bowl, homeboy. We'll see you in Miami.
Go Vikings! Let's win this game.